It's a balmy summer night. You step onto your porch in hopes to catch a midnight breeze. And that's when you see it. Sitting eerily just above the tree line. You try to wrap your mind around its ominous form, defying the laws of physics, as you watch a massive black cube-shaped craft drifting, impossibly, through the air. In recent years, we've been bombarded with unusually serious news reports of anomalous aerial phenomena, accompanied by UFO and UAP hearings in Congress. Yet the promise of disclosure seems ever distant, as cynicism grows with every piece of withheld information and secondhand testimony of the lingering unknown. But outside the halls of Congress, the question remains, what are these things people are seeing in the sky? From El Paso, Texas, to Medellin, Colombia, from the bridge of the USS Roosevelt to the deck of a New Jersey sloop, people are witnessing nearly identical, inexplicable visions, black cubes above. Join us as we break down the testimony, review the encounters, and track the patterns of a very real invasion of the unexplained.
Conspiracy,
synchronicity,
Sasquatch,
homunculus,
alien races,
Satanism in Hollywood, MK Ultra, Tartaria.
There's like a whole, I've been watching this one guy.
Close the door,
Jeremy, close your door!
What's the,
Inner Earth Disagreements.
Ghost Dad.
I like that movie.
Dogman,
Bohemian Grove,
Feldman,
magicians are demons,
specters and
spirit summonings,
paralysis, strange disappearances,
Sky whale phenomenon.
alternative history, shadow people.
Shh, quiet, I'm trying to say words with my mouth.
It's getting dicey out there. Poltergeists.
that's cool. Anunnaki.
What is the moon?
Elf towers. I would never talk about it. That's old. Y2K.
Cover-ups. Apocalyptic catastrophe. Vampire. Well, hello.
Hi there.
Hi, brothers of mine. Jonathan.
Hey, I'm just turning down the volume. Relax.
I was just saying hi. I was welcoming you in.
Oh, I got the death stare from Chris, like I wasn't responding.
No, I was just waiting.
No, I'm just waiting.
Just waiting. Hi, I'm Jeremy. I almost said I'm John.
Hi, I'm John.
And I'm Chris. And we are the Brothers of the Believe Hole.
Welcome to be here
Welcome to be here, everybody.
in the basement.
Thank you to be here with us. It is a strange and beautiful day in the hole, I would say. There's been something bubbling, something brewing. We're a little late to talk about it, but we're kind of putting it off. It happened while we were on our break, and, well, let me just say what it is right off the bat. We today are partially going to be discussing the implications of the controversial, and I say controversial because, well, there's multiple reasons for that, but the controversial hearing of the UAP, quote unquote, disclosure hinting, I guess you could say. Not necessarily revelatory, but you guys know.
It kind of was. I mean, it depends.
A little background on this, because then I want to get into some of the really interesting, strange things coming up in this episode.
Yeah, so this was a congressional hearing on UAPs. The second one, they did one last year, which was kind of a wet blanket.
Nothing burger.
Kind of a nothing burger. This one, it was the House Subcommittee on National Security, the Border, and Foreign Affairs. Ooh. John, you didn't catch this, did you?
I did not.
I put off watching it for a while because I assumed it was going to be the same old rigmarole.
Yeah, I would say I was super uninterested when I heard. I was just so, and I think, John, you feel this way. I think we all did that. I'm just so cynical now about any quote unquote disclosure coming, because it's always, secondhand testimony. No one's actually seen it firsthand.
Nothing ever changes.
Yeah. We get bits like Dave Fraver's stuff that came out was really good. Who no one apparently can pronounce his name.
It's funny watching
Farver, Faver. He's the guy with the Tic-Tac UFO. Saw that. We covered on the Nimitz. We covered that previously. We'll touch on that again, but
I didn't realize how long ago we did those stories, but it was our first season, episode 23. We covered
Holy crap.
some of the accounts we're going to be refreshing today.
that's crazy.
Yeah.
It's been so long. But yeah, so needless to say, if you guys have been following out there, you've probably felt similarly frustrated with the lack of information coming out and the false promises of, well, this is going to be really like the disclosure. But of course, then there's always the question that I have, which is like, well, whatever disclosure they give us, is that going to be the truth?
Right.
And actually, guys, in the expansion, we're going to go over more back and forth with the specific testimony, because I think, actually, I was surprised there was some really interesting information. leading into the reality of this strange kind of craft phenomena, these cubed crafts I'm going to get into later this episode. But I was surprised that the hearing was kind of, I don't know, oddly refreshing in that it was, not to get into politics at all, but bipartisan. Some of the congressmen and congresswomen were genuinely interested. You could tell that they cared, no matter what else their political beliefs were, and they actually both worked to get this hearing done on both sides of the aisle. So like, at least in that, because I generally have a skeptical view of the government, that they're ever helping, or trying.
Right. Well, I think that's interesting because Congress is also out of the loop. So you can understand why they would be working together to try to get more information.
They're allegedly fighting to try to get more information.
There's definitely some people in Congress that, there are politicians that are good.
That's true. Ron Paul. He was in Congress for a long time.
There's a handful.
Yeah.
Baker's dozen.
A baker's dozen.
I was introduced to a couple of people I didn't know because you don't see them in the news a lot in Congress.
But Representative Tim Burchett from Tennessee, Burleson, Montana, Representative Luna from Florida, and Moskowitz from Florida as well.
But it was a bipartisan subcommittee, so the people that brought this together were Democrats and Republicans. You can tell that they are really passionate about it and really do believe.
Some of them almost got emotional.
Yeah. Burchett at one point was pretty upset, understandably.
Because he gets into like the financials and how, like, obviously the Pentagon loses $5 billion in a fiscal year.
And he's asking Grusch, the whistleblower we're going to be talking about shortly. So is this where these funds might be going? And Grusch says, absolutely.
Well, he asked him first, like, do you know how, since you're the whistleblower, how they fund these projects or whatever? And studying these crafts and allegedly
reverse
engineering. How do they fund it? And he kind of like answered it, but not really. And that's when the congressman was like, well, if you spend more than $600 on eBay, or you sell more than $600 on eBay, the IRS is going to be breathing down your neck. And yet the Pentagon or DOD can lose $2 trillion in a fiscal year with no oversight whatsoever. No, like, accountability of half. Well, we just lost it. And that's what he was complaining about, like, so angrily. So it's cool to see that there are people that care and will point this stuff out.
Right. And Grusch was kind of confirming what we've talked about for years. Obviously, that a lot of that money goes to black budget projects.
Yeah.
Which is pretty common knowledge, even though it's not admitted.
We're going to play some clips, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the Grusch guy, he's the big whistleblower that came out now. And whatever you think about him, it's kind of interesting because I watched it and there's something about him. And I don't know him personally, so I don't want to say like cast aspersions or anything, but there was something about him that just felt like I didn't immediately trust him, Like he just had kind of like, it seemed like he kind of liked being in the
he's smiley
limelight a little bit. Maybe that's just me putting that on him. It could just be
he seems very confident, but he also seems a little indignant, I think, because I think he's been fighting factions within the secret group for a while to try to get this stuff out. And he's been stonewalled a lot. So you can see when he's like, he does this kind of smirk and he's like nodding his head quickly. It's because I think a lot of it's because he's been frustrated and he's happy to be, and he's been under threat reportedly.
Right.
What he says. But he's an interesting guy because he is a decorated combat officer. He served in Afghanistan, also worked at the National Geospatial Intelligence Agency and the National Reconnaissance Office. So he had oversight. In 2019, he was given oversight to oversee some of these groups and to report back to the UAP committee at the Pentagon. This is him here. He's going, yeah.
His face reminds me of somebody.
It does.
He just reminds me of someone that I don't, and I hate to say that because I don't know him personally.
Yeah.
I don't want to judge someone just based on the way they talk or,
Right.
Because he's obviously.
Who does that remind me of?
Do we have any clips of him, Chris?
Yeah, actually, I was going to play one right. And just to give us a background, we're going to do more clips, probably a couple more in the main episode. In the expansion, we're going to do some more reaction to clips and really get into the testimony.
Yeah. Because I really want to get back here and dive into these super bizarre accounts of these eerie floating cubes.
But I did want to start off with a bit of his News Nation interview because this is what kicked off the whole explosion in the media when he first started blowing the whistle before they called for this hearing.
And yeah, guys, join the expansion if you want to hear more of our specific reaction to some really interesting points during the hearing that we're going to pull apart and get into during the expansion.
Yeah, we'll also talk about if there's disclosure, what would that look like? I'm going to touch on some Richard Dolan stuff and also talk about some future tech because there's some really interesting stuff that we're working on.
In the belief hole.
In the belief hole, right here, right now.
The future tech.
We're going off planet.
Watch out, SpaceX.
Here comes the hole.
Space hole.
Space hole. We are a threat.
Space hole.
So this is Grusch on News Nation. This is kind of where he blew his whistle, so to speak.
What conclusion did you come to at the end of your time on the UAP task force?
The UAP task force was refused access to a broad crash retrieval program.
When you say crash retrieval, what do you mean?
These are retrieving non-human origin technical vehicles, call it spacecraft if you will, non-human, exotic origin vehicles that have either landed or crashed.
We have spacecraft from another species.
We do, yeah.
How many?
Quite a number.
You're kidding.
No.
No.
First, I was being deceived. It was a ruse. People started confiding in me. They approached me. I have plenty of current and former senior intelligence officers that came to me, many of which I knew almost my whole career, that confided in me they were a part of a program. They named the program. I've never heard of it. And they told me, based on their oral testimony, and they provided me documents and other proof, that there was, in fact, a program that the UAP task force was not read into.
Grusch alleges the U.S. government has recovered non-human craft for decades.
If you're right, if you're telling us the truth, everyone, the entire American public, has been lied to.
No.
Just the American
a
public?
sophisticated disinformation campaign targeting the U.S. populace, which is extremely unethical and immoral.
You are saying to the human race, for the first time, an official intelligence representative at a high level from the US government is saying publicly, we are not alone.
We're definitely not alone. Absolutely, the data points empirically that we're not alone, yeah.
Do we have bodies? Do we have species of
Well,
non-human?
naturally, when you recover something that's either landed or crashed, sometimes you encounter dead pilots. And believe it or not, as fantastical as that sounds, it's true.
That's pretty interesting. I mean, there's a lot to say about that.
It's hard to, this is the kind of the balancing act is like, is he telling the truth? That you have to wonder that, but we know that he is who he says he is. We know he's worked for the people that he says he's worked for, and he's had oversight over these committees. What is his motive for making it up? Right. Well, this is the thing. I don't think he has to make it up. I don't either. If some of the information, say, is controlled, this is all secondhand testimony, right? So people have come to him with their stories, with visual evidence, but none of them have so far testified, at least not in front of Congress. Right. And allegedly he has the materials, he says, during the congressional hearing, he knows where these craft are, where they're stationed right now, where the bodies are. Where the bodies have been kept. He has a lot of this information, which he has, and he can show Congress if Congress is given special access to a skiff, which is a private room that they can go into with him, and then he can divulge this information. But they have been disallowed to go into the skiff by the governing body, whatever, the DOD maybe, the Department of Defense. I'm not sure who's in charge of that.
The DNI and Defense Intelligence Agency have direct authority over skiff facilities.
Basically, you need like a higher up alphabet organization to decide, or a committee of national intelligence or defense to say that these congressmen or women are allowed access to the information that you as a whistleblower can share, which is still like, if they want you to do it, then you're not getting in there. There's still like obviously this control, which is just like, I'll blow my whistle, but it's going to be hampered.
It just seems like almost an intentional slow drip.
Yeah, that's the frustrating part.
They told him to do this, where it's like there's a certain amount of information that almost has to come out.
Yeah.
Maybe like it's time to let people know, but slowly. Mm-hmm. There's only certain amounts, because I feel like to have that level of information come out, almost like, because they can make people disappear pretty easily if they really want to.
Well, there is, and he's very careful. Like, so there must be some kind of agreement during the congressional hearing that we'll go over. He says things like, well, I can say this, but I'm not at liberty to talk about that. So he's obviously, there are limitations, regulations, and boundaries that he's, whether it's for national security and he could get in serious trouble. So he's gone through the appropriate channels to be an approved whistleblower, which is kind of a weird idea in the first place. But that's the way it is. Like, if you want whistleblower status, you can talk, but then it's like you can only blow whistle on so much.
It's so strange.
It allows you to get things on the record, and I think before you announce it publicly, so that, you know, and also that way you're not just opening yourself up through other people for dangerous possibilities. You know, you can, if you're talking about classified things, and some things you still, I guess, can't talk about even as a whistleblower. Right. But yeah, the whole thing is interesting. It's just different than like a whistleblower in the sense of maybe a Julian Assange or Edward Snowden, or a kind of whistleblower where I know that Julian Assange published things specifically while being concerned about certain, you know, national defense or like people being at risk by being outed as a part of certain projects. But I think Edward Snowden dropped all this stuff, right? And he, you know, this guy could have done that, but then you don't have the protection, which is why we're pursuing these other people to put them in jail. Whereas he's not.
Plus, it gives you credibility if you go through the whistleblower thing. Like you verified that you do work for these organizations.
But you're blowing the whistle against the government that's giving you whistleblower status. It's just such a weird thing.
It is definitely kind of a weird.
That's the whole thing, right?
It's trusting factions within the government.
Right. And this goes to an interesting thing, I think. Richard Dolan, I think probably the most authoritative voice on this whole thing, in my opinion, and just ufology history when it comes to the government and the national security state. He talks about this. His belief is that it's not what a lot of people think, which is, I think a lot of people, our listeners probably out there are thinking this, like distraction.
Yeah.
This is all distraction, fabrication, pulling the strings, it is possible. But he makes a good point, and he believes that it could be the result that it's kind of a distraction from other things going on, but he believes that it's actually, what we're seeing is a factional war within the secret group, within the government, where there are people that we know that work at these programs like the UAP task force and higher up programs, and that these are all made of people. And there are some people with differing degrees.
White hats and black hats.
And from the beginning of UFO history in America, go back to the 40s, well, as Grusch says, the 30s now, but since the 1940s, you've had people come out in these positions of power or try to drip out information because they don't agree with the secrecy program. Right. Or they, at some point, don't believe in that anymore, but they sign up, whatever their patriotism gets them to sign up for something, and then they're like, but they don't agree with it on an individual level. So you have these factions. So he believes this is sort of the beginning of a factional war that we're seeing, and we're going to see more of it.
It kind of reminds me of Aaron Russo with Freedom and Fascism. Remember when he talked to one of the Rockefellers who he befriended? And had this information and like,
why do you care about these people?
Yeah, obviously there's a plan of control, and Russo, who was like with the elites in the upper class at that time, and because of his connections and everything, decided to turn away. So in that kind of sense,
wasn't he just friends with one of the?
Yeah, but he was like a Hollywood producer.
Yeah, I don't think he was really considered one of the elites.
No, but he was in that crowd, like mingling. Like he was friends with him, and he saw the parties and things like that.
Yeah,
he could have just been a part of that. Instead, he, I'm just saying, like as far as like a factional in a government body or an agency where some people,
it's like anything. There's always going to be the good and the what we consider good and bad.
Right. For and against truth and censorship.
Yeah.
The yin and the yang, the dark and the light.
The last thing I was going to say about the Richard Dolan had to say I thought was interesting. He talks about the red line of disclosure. And this is the idea that like eventually, let's say, okay, we've got Grusch, right, who is blowing the whistle, but still secondhand, right? If there's a first-hand account, a whistleblower, say it's like an ex-president or something, somebody that's really just exposing this to the public.
Yeah.
At that point, if the government decides to admit even a little bit, which there's a thing going on in the Senate right before next election, we might see something interesting, but if they admit anything to that degree, even if they say, we do know that these things are here, we do know 100% that they are not human. If they say that someone with real authority, first-hand knowledge says that, that's the red line of UFO disclosure, which means at that point, they can no longer tell society conspiracy theories are bad. You can't believe in conspiracy theories that people in the government are conspiring because they've just exposed the biggest conspiracy theory to be a fact.
Conspiracy theory just means they don't want you to believe in something. It's just a blanket term for...
They don't want you to believe there are people in power pulling the strings and keeping secrets from you.
It's just a way of discrediting any idea or theory that they don't want to give any traction to.
Exactly. What I'm saying...
So Dolan's argument is that if they admit that they've been hiding, then...
They still will,
do it.
Unless...
They'll say, well, that weird line about that thing.
At some point, like, I don't know how all this stuff is going to wash out in the end, but for a long time, it just does feel like there's this climax coming of something, like where...
Yeah, it's like tantric disclosure of truth. It just
well,
feels
not
like,
just this, though.
No, that's what I'm saying.
So many areas in our world right now that seem to be like either coming to an end or... You know what I mean?
Yeah,
like
acceleration, AI,
the economic system is going to be, that's kind of on its last legs. There's just so much in the world.
I think we're doing great.
I'm not even saying it's good or bad. It just seems like it reminds me of the Terrence McKenna time wave.
Yeah. Novelty increasing.
Zero. Yeah. Where it's just like, it gets to this point where there's so much more new stuff happening. Did you hear this is a little off topic, but something about the room temperature semiconductor discovery?
It sounds familiar.
I've heard people talking about this a lot through my communities.
John's Grapevine.
And I don't know too much about it, but if it's true, it will change everything about computers. Mm-hmm. It will change the world so dramatically.
What did you say about the room temperature?
The room temperature semiconductors.
Yeah, it's interesting because I was looking at D-Wave computers because part of what we're talking about this episode is the invasion of these sun-eating black cubes that people are seeing more and more that are fascinating, terrifying things. but also beautiful. But so I was comparing the first time I tried to do the episode on the black cube way back. We talked about this earlier off mic, and I did a terrible job, but I was trying to tie it to like the occult and the Saturn death cult and the black cube conspiracies around that. But I was looking at D-Wave computing, and I was looking at my notes, and I was just happened to be looking at it, and it is a giant black cube. But the interesting thing about it, I only read a little bit about it, was that like the room temperature semiconductors, the key to D-Wave computing and how it's so efficient from what I can understand is that none of the pieces that are, they're built in a certain way and like compiled on top of each other in this cube formation, they're all working at a minimum energy constantly. That's the key, essentially, is that nothing's overworked. But it reminds me of the room temperature. It's not heating up semiconductor. I wonder if there's a connection to that, because that allows for, allegedly, according to the creator, running information through a parallel dimension.
That's like the quantum computing.
Quantum computing, yeah. That's the D-Wave computer.
Okay.
Maybe that's how these black cubes that are appearing in our skies are using a similar technology to bounce in and out. Yeah. But we have some crazy stories of that coming out. Well, that'll tie into the expansion, future tech stuff, because I want to talk about that, John, because I hadn't heard about this, but it'll roll right in with what I'm going to talk about in the expansion. Have you heard about, I forget the name of it, but it's like a metal lighter than air.
Lighter than air?
Mm-hmm.
No.
Yeah, it's incredible. We're building it, right? We can make it at a small level right now, but they're like these little tubes that are built in like a lattice system. Aerographene. What is it called? Aerographene. Right, or graphene gel or something like that.
Insane.
Yeah.
How is that even possible?
We'll explain it in the expansion. Yeah, that'll be interesting to explore.
Lighter than air? What's lighter than air? Atoms?
Air on a diet? That's good. Thank you.
Crazy, though. Is it pretty strong?
It's stronger than steel.
What?
Mm-hmm. I actually have an article up right here. Well, before we get into that, I want to get into these eerie cubes that people are seeing. These sky cubes are super bizarre, eerie, and fascinating. The reason I wanted to get into the cubes that people are starting to see, and I didn't realize what a new phenomenon this was. Speaking of new things, John, and novelty, this stuff all started happening within the last several years. The cube specifically, people are seeing in the sky. Where are they coming from? Why now? But I was triggered to look into that because of the testimony by Graves. Is it Lieutenant Graves? Mm-hmm. Well, he retired from the Air Force after having all these crazy experiences. Eventually, he retired. I think he was on the Roosevelt, and they were seeing these cubes within spheres. Right. And they were causing such a concern for the pilots that afterwards he's like, no one is taking this seriously, or they're not really doing anything about it. So he started a safety organization based around commercial and Air Force concern. Yeah, so there are these black or gray cubes inside of a translucent sphere, right? Almost like a beach ball. And he would say that the cube inside the sphere, the ends of the cube would be touching this translucent sphere. Is it a force field of some kind? Is it some sort of bubble that allows it to defy the laws of physics in order to travel the way it does? Do you have that bit from his testimony? Yeah. Yeah. Fascinating encounter. This is the kind of stuff that they were seeing out there, which prompted him to start a safety organization. Which I've found many people are seeing, haven't seen the past few years, outside of the military, just civilians and the like.
Thank you. My name is Ryan Fobbs Graves, and I'm a former F-18 pilot with a decade of service in the U.S. Navy, including 2 deployments in Operation Enduring Freedom and Operation Inherent Resolve. I have experienced advanced UAP firsthand, and I'm here to voice the concerns of more than 30 commercial aircrew and military veterans who have confided their similar encounters with me. Today, I would like to highlight 3 critical issues that demand our action. As we convene here, UAP are in our airspace, but they are grossly underreported. These sightings are not rare or isolated, they are routine. Military aircrew and commercial pilots, trained observers whose lives depend on accurate identification, are frequently witnessing these phenomena. The stigma attached to UAP is real and powerful and challenges national security. It silences commercial pilots who fear professional repercussions, discourages witnesses, and is only compounded by recent government claims questioning the credibility of eyewitness testimony. Parts of our government are aware of more about UAP than they let on, but excessive classification practices keep crucial information hidden. Since 2021, all UAP videos are classified as secret or above. This level of secrecy not only impedes our understanding, but fuels speculation and mistrust. In 2014, I was an F-18 Foxtrot pilot in the Navy Fighter Attack Squadron 11, the Red Rippers, and I was stationed at NAS Oceana in Virginia Beach. After upgrades were made to our jet's radar systems, we began detecting unknown objects operating in our airspace. At first, we assumed they were radar errors, but soon we began to correlate the radar tracks with multiple onboard sensors, including infrared systems, eventually through visual ID. During a training mission in warning area Whiskey 72, 10 miles off the coast of Virginia Beach, 2 F-18 Super Hornets were split by a UAP. The object, described as a dark gray or a black cube inside of a clear sphere, came within 50 feet of the lead aircraft and was estimated to be 5 to 15 feet in diameter. The mission commander terminated the flight immediately and returned to base. Our squadron submitted a safety report, but there was no official acknowledgement of the incident and no further mechanism to report the sightings. Soon, these encounters became so frequent that aircrew would discuss the risk of UAP as part of their regular pre-flight briefs. Recognizing the need for action and answers, I founded Americans for Safe Aerospace. The organization has since become a haven for UAP witnesses who were previously unspoken due to the absence of a safe intake process. More than 30 witnesses have come forward, and almost 5,000 Americans have joined us in the fight for transparency at safeaerospace.org. The majority of witnesses are commercial pilots at major airlines. Often, they are veterans with decades of flying experience. Pilots are reporting UAP at altitudes that appear above them at 40,000 feet, potentially in low Earth orbit or in the gray zone below the Kármán line, making inexplainable maneuvers like right-hand turns and retrograde orbits or J-hooks. I believe these accounts are only scratching the surface, and more will share their experiences once it is safe to do so. The American people deserve to know what is happening in our skies. It is long overdue. Thank you.
What's so bizarre about this, and there's an artist's recreation of the cube within the sphere that he refers to, splitting between, going in between the jets, where the pilot saw it at 50 feet.
Yeah.
This thing. We'll put in the show notes the depiction. It's basically a black cube inside of this kind of translucent sphere touching the tips of the cube. And it's so bizarre, dude, because I have footage that regular people have filmed from Medellin, Colombia, to several cities in Minnesota, all different places filming this rolling cube. And if you zoom in and look closely, you can see this almost translucent energy sphere.
Is this the one with the texture on it?
That's a crazy
Dude,
one.
It's so crazy.
That we'll get to towards the end, but it looks like a giant freaking Borg cube falling out of a black hole in the sky. This cloud fart of blackness. This like giant cube just peeks its little wormy cube head through and pokes around. These things hang out in the clouds. They absorb lightning. They live in the sun. It's going to get really weird, guys. I'm telling you, man, these things are out there. I've seen a lot of evidence. I've went through Newfork, through the databases to find other cube-shaped objects. And the images and video, these are all the same craft appearing all over the world.
Weird.
They're real, man.
Jeremy's Crazy Corner coming to
I
life.
wonder, like, does that guy, like, dream about that every night?
Oh, right. Like
He thinks about it all the time.
Yeah.
He's just like, what was that?
Think about how much impact it made on him. So much, in fact, that he left the Air Force and started a safety organization because he's that worried about people running into these things.
Well, he'd say that the briefings before every time they go up, flying off the Roosevelt, they were so common that part of the safety briefing was like, just be careful because you might run into one of these things. You could physically hit this thing.
There's no reports of that ever happening, was there?
As far as like a collision or anything?
Yeah.
I don't think so.
I don't think so.
But they got close.
Yeah.
I feel like whatever these are, they're probably intelligent, don't you think?
Yeah.
Intelligently controlled, at least.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So who knows if they would allow that to happen, or
Exactly.
maybe they're not even fully solid. Who knows?
Well, they do these. They display, as William Shatner would say. They display.
Why don't they display?
Why don't they display? And what is the intent?
I wanted to make a song out of that.
This is so good.
Why don't they display?
That's last expansion episode. But how they're displaying, obviously, so far advanced from what we can do, what we have done, and that's what Fraver. We're not doing his clip right now, but his testimony we've talked about on the show. But that was the Tic-Tac with the Nimitz encounter, where he was the F-18 that went down to investigate this Tic-Tac shape that he said in this testimony. We'll be able to play a bit of that. When he arrived, it was moving like a ping pong ball over the water. Just like
churning water.
Almost instantly just moving across this area of water while water's churning. And then it goes down there. Well, maybe we'll play it. But when they ask him at some point, we'll go into some of the questions from the Congress people to these three witnesses.
Mm-hmm.
And they ask him things like, do you think it's intelligent? Do you think, yada? And they're all like, of course. There's no way that these things could be moving the way that they're moving, and completely in a way that is so far beyond what we can do. And the point for this hearing is it a safety concern? Is this a threat to our national security?
It's a practical way to get at the truth.
And their answer is basically, obviously, yes. As Fraver says later, that this is absolutely a security concern because, for example, that Tic-Tac object, he said, or Tic-Tac object.
Tic-Tac object.
So they made that mistake in Congress.
Tic-Tac. I kept calling it Tic-Tac.
That's a perfect analogy for where we are in the world.
I know.
Didn't the guy call him the wrong name at first? He said two things wrong in a row.
Yeah, he called him like Favor.
Yeah, he said, Mr. Favor, what is the Tic-Tac object you saw?
Anyway, so Fraver's response is, when I saw that object,
to answer the question, if I would have armed my plane, there's no way I would have had time to get a missile off before it took off, because that thing moved from where he was to his radio. The guy on the radio said, when he lost sight of it, he looked back, didn't see it. His radio said like a minute later, oh, it's 60 miles away. So from here to Cleveland in like a minute.
Yeah. Wow.
So estimated like 10,000 miles an hour, something crazy. Was it that Tic-Tac or the cube? That was a Tic-Tac. No, that dropped from 80,000 feet to 0. Those are the cubes they were tracking. Insane.
The controller told us that these objects had been observed for over 2 weeks, coming down from over 80,000 feet, rapidly descending to 20,000 feet, hanging out for hours, and then going straight back up. For those who don't realize, above 80,000 feet is space.
So in space, down to just above the surface of water, they were doing this regularly, like almost instantaneously. Just, that's so crazy. I have a story coming up of a boat captain who almost ran into one, a cube, just floating off the surface of the water. Crazy. Small one, but yeah. But you asked as far as like anything colliding. In the expansion, there's a story I have about a fighter pilot who scrambled over Lake Huron. And interestingly, Michigan is where a lot of these cube sightings happen for some reason. Michigan, Minnesota, Texas. That's where we had that recent UAP that we shot down. Exactly. In Medellin. Medellin had like 3 in 1 year. Very strange. But in 1953, I believe it was, a fighter pilot was scrambled to investigate. And they only had radar. They tracked him on radar. And eventually their radar blips, both the unidentified craft and the plane blip, merged or collided. And eventually the UFO blip, you could say, sped off, and the pilot and plane disappeared. They never found him.
Really?
Looking forward to that story. So that'll be in the expansion. Well, we'll do more congressional hearing stuff because there's some really incredible testimony that's given. We'll do that in the expansion. If you want to get into our really juicy cubular stories, Jer, I'm excited for that. I do. I would say the cubes are coming. That's what I titled this initially. The black cubes are coming, but they're already here, and they've been here for a little while. Now, when I say cubes, what I'm talking about are essentially these core characteristics. They're usually seen hovering or floating, very eerie, just above the tree line, maybe. Usually seen about 100 feet max from the ground perspective, although we do have some pilots reporting. We have video footage of a pilot who actually filmed one in the sky, moving below him. So they can be hovering just above the tree line, just above the surface of water, tumbling silently. So weird. Slow roll, tumble through the sky. Multiple people reported this tumble motion or slow spin. And what's interesting is they also report, and we have video footage of, because I read accounts first with no footage, where they see a reflection, like one side is reflecting as it spins. And then we also have video footage corroborating that from different accounts of the same slow black cube tumbling with this reflecting glare of one side.
I just saw one on Facebook. Seems like it's spinning kind of fast.
Oh, you saw one?
Yeah, I just was looking up on my phone, and there's just one. It was pretty high up. It was definitely a cube, and it was definitely one side was like really reflective.
That's weird.
And it was spinning fast.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm sure they can spin different speeds, but it is a weird...
This one was up pretty high.
Well, they've seen like we'll show the airliner guy too. The pilot, airliner guy. Is that a pilot? That's what they call him?
Airliner guy.
Hi, Jim, professional airliner guy. But the one that was just above the water that we're going to just share a brief account from a boat captain, that was only 3 feet in diameter. A little guy. Whereas the one from Graves that you didn't mention yet, the red square. Oh, yeah. The red cube is football field sized. That was, to me, one of the biggest moments in the hearing, even though it went over pretty quickly. Actually, I have that clip. Let's do that after the break. Okay. Fascinating. But some even say, specifically Scott, he does a show called UFO Sightings Daily on YouTube. Some really interesting footage on there. He would suggest that some of these are Earth-sized, and they live in the sun. What? Consuming the plasmic energy, like a fuel source or a embryonic fluid, maybe. And some people believe these things are biological. One witness, I think I have that clip where he's talking about it breathing. This cube, as it passes, like an undulation. It glows in it almost like a breathing pattern before it disappears. Huh. Like our sky creatures. It could be a form of sky creature, or it could be an advanced Borg-type technology. It does look, there's bizarre pictures, man. Resistance is futile. Where it does look like very similar to a Borg-type object, this kind of compartmentalized, almost circuit-built cube, but organic in a way. Very strange. So if you guys aren't watching on YouTube, you should check this out on YouTube, because I'm going to have a lot of interesting images and video in our video. And we had a listener story submit a cube account years ago. Yeah. Well, that's the thing I was going to say. And interestingly, we have some footage of this too. A lot of these things are seen in storms, almost as if they're feeding off the lightning, the energy, ominously illuminated in the heart of the storm.
It's actually kind of interesting.
Yeah.
Kind of cool.
Yeah, because we've heard, the idea that maybe some craft might use the sun for energy, right? Why not energetics? Do you see, you guys may have seen some of this on YouTube, different strange objects in the sky, illuminated, backlit by these lightning storms. In fact, here's an image of that, John. This was in New Jersey.
Know this in the show notes, and check out our YouTube where you can watch it and hear us talk about it.
This comes from UFO Sightings Daily. This was in Vineland, New Jersey. The eyewitness says, I pulled out my phone to film a strange, silent lightning storm. After reviewing the footage, I noticed what appears to be a cube-like shape in the clouds.
Interesting that it was silent storm.
Interestingly, this is in New Jersey, where I have another account of a cube, actually the boat captain. And I have other accounts of people witnessing cubes during a storm. Not with video, but also seeing the same thing.
Could that just be part of the cloud, though?
Yeah, for sure. It is oddly geometric, this cube. I mean, obviously...
It is a little weird. I mean, it's pretty weird compared to every other shape on the cloud.
Yeah, the coloring, too, is different from the clouds in front of it.
If you zoom in, you can see it better on a computer screen.
Yeah.
Because you don't see the bottom side because it's covered by cloud, but the other three sides are very straight 90-degree angles, and it almost has a softer color, like it's further behind that cloud. Like it's tucked behind.
It's in it.
Yeah.
Well, you could argue that ledge right below the square is also a 90-degree kind of flat.
That looks weird
angle,
too.
Could it be pixelation from the camera? But I guess he zooms out and it still has that square. Right. So there wouldn't be pixelation.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Definitely looks odd compared to every other part of the cloud.
And you can tell it's three-dimensional by the dark kind of side. Anyways, that'll be in the show notes, guys. But that's just one. I mean, there are a lot of people reporting seeing this specifically in clouds.
What about our own listener account of the cube that they saw? He had seen this previous to any testimony from Graves or from
2017.
So before all that.
Yeah, that is weird that we had our own. The idea of a floating cube in the sky was so bizarre to me and eerie. But the first account I heard of it was from our own listener.
Yeah.
I thought we did that story.
We never did it because I wrote back to him, I think 6 months later. This is when we were first getting really into the story archive stuff. And I think he just fell off the track of communication. But he was really interested to find out. He had heard an older episode and heard us talking about black cubes. So that's why he reached out.
That's crazy.
But did you want to read that one?
All right. This came from Kyle Smith, and he sent it in February 19th, 2021. We call this Black Cube Cul-De-Sac. Although I don't buy into most paranormal stories and folklore, I do believe there's some things that we humans can't explain, yet, or don't understand. My whole life I've never really believed in anything like ghosts or demons, as I'm not too religious or, to be honest, even interested in anything along those lines. But when I was in the middle of...
How'd you find the hole?
A friend sent him our episode on Skinwalker Ranch.
Oh.
Then he started listening to the show, and then he heard about the black cube thing. Anyway.
Oh. Okay. But when I was in middle school, I was walking up my street, and I remember seeing my friend's parents looking up in the sky, pointing at something. As I looked up myself, I saw a flock of geese in their V formation, flying eastward away from my position. And right in the middle of these geese formation was a black cube, flying right along with them. These geese were almost right above me, and I heard nothing. Due to surrounding houses and trees, I only saw the box or cube for about 10 seconds. Afterward, I didn't really know how to perceive it, and honestly still don't. For years, I've thought about it and pondered what it could have been. I've looked into seeing if anyone has seen anything else, and I haven't found much on it. I was listening to another one of your episodes on shadow people when it was briefly mentioned. You guys were the first source I've heard discussing it, and I was wondering if you guys know any other information or stories on flying black cubes while we do now. But this is something I've been curious about ever since it happened. I've recently been accepted into the Navy to be a pilot, and it recently re-sparked my interest on my whole experience with the whole UFO incidents that have happened. I'm a certified flight instructor, CFI, and have almost 1,000 hours at this point, and I have never seen anything I couldn't explain. I've seen an iridium flare before, and it's insane just how bright it can light up the sky, and I now contribute that to a lot of people's UFO sightings, but I've never seen anything I can't explain while flying. I saw you guys have an episode about that, and I'm going to check it out soon. Thanks, guys. I love the podcast. Hope to hear from you guys soon. Thank you, Kyle.
Yeah.
Sorry for the 2-year delay in doing that story, but it is quite fascinating.
Yeah.
And lining up with a lot of other cube stories that we're seeing now.
I thought it was interesting with flying in between the V formation of the geese.
Yeah, wide is that?
Yeah.
How wide
Well, it's wide enough to think about the two Hornets. It said split the two Hornets.
30 feet maybe.
30 feet, something like that. I mean, the cubes I think that Graves was describing was like 5 meters across or something, 15 feet, whatever. So it could fit there. And that's what's interesting to me is these things seem to like to take chances or whatever you want to call it, whatever their motivation, but they fly, shoot right down above the water. They fly in between Hornet fighter jets. They fly in between geese. Is it just fun?
Yeah, it's weird that the geese didn't react to it.
Yeah.
They really go, hey,
buddy.
Well, there could be a telepathic angle to this because there are people that say they feel either like it was watching them. And oddly, there is this short-term memory loss effect some people have.
Yeah.
Specifically with the cube craft. Actually, this is the last short thing I'll do here. Here's another clip from UFO Sighting News. He has a lot of great cube videos, actually, because I think a lot of people send him their own videos. This happened in Coos Bay, Oregon, April 5th. And what he says about this clip is, the eyewitness states, it was a strange cube floating in the air. I was with 3 friends. We were out hunting. We walked up into a clear cut, and there it was, maybe 300 feet away, and about 50 feet off the ground. Strangely, none of us remembered this. It wasn't until I was removing some random video clips that I discovered it. I have the video. Again, very oddly, once we observed this cube for a while, the 3 of us just turned and left, as it was simply no more interest to us. Who would do that? Just turn and walk away from a UFO. So he's suggesting that their mind was all kind of blipped.
Yeah.
And it wasn't until he was looking at footage from that day that he came across it again and then suddenly remembered, oh, we saw this cube. We started filming it. It's kind of hard to see. It's a low-res video, but I'm going to play it here right now. And again, this is in Oregon, Coos Bay, April 5th, 2023. All these happened like 2020 and on.
Is that it in the middle?
Yeah, it's this.
Oh, crazy.
This little guy.
They're all small. I mean, almost all.
Yeah, a lot of them are like 3 to 5 feet, 15 feet. Hello, I'm just a silver cube. I think he is talking in this.
Just below the fog. At 40 in fog.
They're like, oh, I guess we're done. Guess we'll walk away. Slow motion sound. You can even see the sides, like the little...
Yeah, it's definitely some of the other ones I've seen, very reflective kind of.
That's weird though. Did they go up and investigate?
No.
They just walked away?
And they don't remember
that's right.
why.
That's what you were saying, yeah.
Lost interest, like it told them nothing to see here.
So weird.
Move along.
Go away now, human.
It's so bizarre, man. Here's another photo. This is from...
Here's another photo, listeners.
I'll just describe it. East Brookfield, Massachusetts, June 29th, 2023. The witness describes driving by Kingsbury Farm, North Brookfield Road in East Brookfield, Massachusetts. They noticed a very large bright light above. It was dusk. Too early for stars in the sky. It was too low. Basically, to them, it looked like a singular headlight in the sky, just staring down.
But square-shaped.
And after taking the photograph, you can see clearly this is just a square that actually has a defined cube-like structure of bright light.
It's like a window opening.
That's what a lot of people describe too, as it's seeming like a window or something opening in the sky. Anyway, there's a lot more. I know we have a break coming up. We'll get into more of that and more of these bizarre sightings because there's something up there that people are seeing. And I think that's the big takeaway from this conference to me.
Yeah.
Or the hearing was like, no matter what you believe, if they're controlling some information.
Yeah, if Grusch is being misled intentionally by higher ups, either way, we know these things are being seen and they're real.
Yeah, and we don't know what they are.
Yeah.
We obviously don't know the public. So even if someone does, and they're like, oh, we're never going to learn the truth. I think it's still important to think about what are these things that are up there. Listen to the testimony of people that see them. Maybe there's nothing we can do about it from ground level, but I think there's a truth behind it that we should try to be interested in discovering.
We should discuss it with Neil deGrasse Tyson.
He's like, I don't know.
He didn't have a response. Maybe we should play that later. I haven't watched it yet. I'm sure it's a ho-hum.
Well, there's a lot of strange things in nature, in space.
There's a lot of plant life out there in the sky, shaped like cubes.
It blows my mind when you have skeptics trying to argue against people like Fraver who've experienced these things. I heard,
firsthand.
I forget who it was. It was on the Hill or something. And the guy who I liked, but he was like, yeah, I believe he believes that he saw that, but until I see it, I'm just going to go with probably not.
Yeah.
It's like, okay.
Weird. Wow, yeah. Some people are like programmed not to.
Yeah.
They don't want to think about it.
I think he was more cynical about just ever getting told the truth. That's what I picked up from it. Not necessarily that it's not real, but just that what's the point of paying attention when they're never going to tell you?
Well, I think he leans towards that we're not being visited. But then there's the other guy from
But being visited, what does that
Breaking
mean?
Points.
You could be being visited by either black technology, secret.
He means off-world, like ETs. There's no evidence of that it's an ET, and that's
I agree with that.
One thing we should
don't
say
know that it's an ET.
That's one thing we should say. Grusch says, well, he says it's non-human. These biologics that we've discovered in these
Right.
downcrafts, but he doesn't
doesn't say alien.
He won't commit to alien. Other dimensional, maybe ET, but he said he doesn't want to put an origin for whatever these things are.
I think that's smart. I don't think there's any reason to think that any of this craft is extraterrestrial.
Right.
I mean, that's the obvious go-to.
It could be intraterrestrial.
They could be flugelrads from the inner Earth.
What's the difference though? It's still, we're not alone. Like,
Right.
Unless it's old repurposed Tesla tech or something. Like electromagnetic anti-gravitic technology built by ancient civilization that may be human. It could be something that's not off-world or not alien.
ancient tech built by humans of those, they're still around?
Do you mean during like some cataclysm we went inside the Earth and we've continued to build?
Well, there's the
advanced
breakaway
technology?
civilization
Right.
idea, which we've covered before, where ancient tech that built stuff that could have been here all along, maybe went underground.
So just some sort of civilization that's not known by us, sort of
It's
thing?
possible.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the thing. If you believe Grusch, or if you consider what he's saying, he is saying that these are non-human because the biology
Right.
of the material that's been found is not human.
That's what he's been told.
Yes.
Right.
By people that he's worked with.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
All right, guys, we're going to take a quick break. And when we get back, boy, do we have some strange tales for you. Some very eerie encounters with these sun-guzzling, lightning-feeding, creepy black cubes watching you right now.
And if you want more of the whole, sign up for the expansion where you get an extra episode every time we drop an episode. And here is a clip from today's expansion episode. Take it away.
Access granted.
Lieutenant Graves still cannot explain what he saw. In the summer of 2014, he and Lieutenant Danny Acoin, another Super Hornet pilot, were part of a squadron, the VFA-11 Red Rippers, out of Naval Air Station Oceana, Virginia, that was training for a deployment to the Persian Gulf. The pilots began noticing the objects after their 1980s era radar was upgraded to a more advanced system. As one fighter jet after another got the new radar, pilots began picking up the objects, but ignoring what they thought were false radar tracks. Quote,
People have seen strange stuff in the military aircraft for decades.
Lieutenant Graves said.
We're doing this very complex mission to go from 30,000 feet diving down. It would be a pretty big deal to have something up there.
But he said the objects persisted, showing up at 30,000 feet, 20,000 feet, even sea level. They could accelerate, slow down, and hit hypersonic speeds. Lieutenant Acoin said he interacted twice with the objects. The first time, after picking up the object on his radar, he set his plane to merge with it, flying 1,000 feet below it. He said he should have been able to see it with his helmet camera, but could not, even though his radar told him it was there. A few days later, Lieutenant Acoin said a training missile on his jet locked on the object, and his infrared camera picked it up as well. Quote,
I knew I had it. It was not a false hit,
he said, but still.
I could not pick it up visually.
At this point, the pilots said they speculated that the objects were part of some classified and extremely advanced drone program. But then, pilots began seeing the objects. In late 2014, Lieutenant Graves said he was back at base in Virginia Beach when he encountered a squadron mate just back from a mission, quote, with a look of shock on his face. He said he was stunned to hear the pilot's words, quote,
I almost hit one of those things,
the pilot told Lieutenant Graves. The pilot and his wingman were flying in tandem about 100 feet apart over the Atlantic, east of Virginia Beach, when something flew between them, right past the cockpit. It looked to the pilot, Lieutenant Graves said, like a sphere encasing a cube. The incident so spooked the squadron that an aviation flight safety report was filed. The near miss angered the squadron and convinced them that the objects were not part of a classified drone program. Government officials would know fighter pilots were training in the area, they reasoned, and would not send drones to get in the way. Quote,
It turned from a potentially classified drone program to a safety issue,
said Graves.
It was going to be a matter of time before someone had a mid-air collision.
welcome back. Hi.
Hi.
Here we go. You guys ready? Get on in that cube and go to work. Grab that cube and go to work. It's a terrible Tombstone reference. Okay, guys, we're just going to jump right into it here because there is just so much, and I know we don't have a ton of time, but there is so much fascinating stuff.
I knew there'd be a lot of just talking about this stuff.
Yeah, whenever, there's something happening now.
There's just a lot of thoughts with this kind of stuff.
But there's a lot of interesting evidence that I pulled together, so I'm going to try to get through as much of it as possible for you guys. Again, it is visual, but we'll be describing what we're seeing here. This next piece comes from a pilot named Caesar. He flies an Airbus A320 for Viva Air, which is a low-cost Colombian airline. Now, he was soaring over Medellin, Colombia, which I believe is made famous because of the drug dealer.
Yeah.
Pablo Escobar? Pablo Escobar, yeah. Good guy. Controversial figure. But he's flying over Medellin, and this is what he captures, guys.
What if Pablo Escobar is like waving from
It's just Pablo's in the cube. So he's flying at about 30,000 feet. That's what he's showing on his dashboard there, his altitude. And we're going to see this black little cube fella just
so
cruising
weird.
along. Hey, what's up? Just monitoring these clouds over here, doing my alien duty. And then the video reverses. There's a close-up. Again, it's a black cubicle structure.
They should have let it go through all the way.
I have a screenshot. This will be in the show notes too, just so we can further describe it to you guys. Here's a still.
Reminds me of like you're watching like a Star Wars movie.
Yeah, it does look like one of those like
the way it's moving.
Not the X-Wings. What are those other things? I forget what they're called. T-fighters or something?
TIE fighters.
Okay, I'm going to zoom in here. Maybe I do this on the YouTube video as well. I played the video and then I zoomed in myself. And this is when I started to see what looked like a halo effect around the cube. And of course, this could be pixelation of the video, but you see a very slight, do you see that? Maybe. Very slight. A spherical distortion field. See that kind of glowing? Yeah. I can see it better on my screen.
Interesting, yeah.
But there is a halo kind of glow around
it's like
this.
an energy field.
Exactly. And that's exactly what Graves was describing the pilot seeing around the cube.
It's not spinning as much as some of the other ones I've seen.
Sometimes they spin, sometimes they roll, and sometimes they just hover. And actually, the argument I think maybe why is because I don't think the cube is necessarily moving in this video. The pilot is flying past it.
Oh.
So we could just be seeing it sitting still.
Oh, interesting.
Well, it still could spin though, even when it's sitting still.
It can do whatever it wants, John. It doesn't have to spin at your leisure.
I'm a cube expert.
I want
You don't have
spinning.
to tell me twice. I want spinning.
Tumble. Anyways, it almost looks like it has points sticking out of the side of it, almost hexagonal.
Again, the texture. We'll see shortly. There's some that have just this incredible texture that you can visually see.
It's crazy that the pilot had that ability to like see it that far away and get his phone up.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Capture it.
Because it goes by pretty quick. You know what I mean? That's the only thing that kind of makes me a little bit suspicious about it.
Yeah. Well, so in the conversation he had on his TikTok, so he's filmed stuff he sees in the sky. It's kind of what he does as a pilot. Lightning storms.
Okay.
I just happened to see this.
Oh, he does?
Yeah.
Okay, so he's kind of used to pulling stuff out quick and recording. Okay.
His TikTok is about stuff he sees from the sky.
That's a little bit more credible.
Someone asked him in the comments of his TikTok, can you confirm and swear that this is unedited? He said, the video is real.
Well, there you have it.
Posted more videos. This is also covered on the History Channel, by the way. I found later. The History Channel covered it for...
It's definitely real.
In the article I read about this, it says, as yet, Caesar hasn't commented on what he saw, but he did title the video... Where is it? I just saw it. Basically, it says UFO over Medellin, but in Spanish. It's like UVL, or I forget what it's called.
I do feel a little bad we've got so much video stuff this episode.
I know. I'm just going to try to describe it as much as I can.
You'll have to go, if you're listening, you'll have to go somewhere to see this.
Yeah.
Won't we have everything linked somewhere?
Yeah, there'll be a link if you're listening to a podcast audio episode, in the description, click view full show notes. It'll take you to our webpage with images. But even better, go to the YouTube video.
Yeah, that's true. You might want to watch this one on YouTube if you are normally an audio person, because it'll just probably be a little bit less frustrating. Sorry about that, but you can't really do an episode like this without showing some of the footage.
Yeah, cannot talk about stuff just because it's visual, So, people did criticize him on this, saying like, allegedly someone said, oh, there's screenshots of your DM saying you said it was a weather balloon or it was explainable or something, but I couldn't find that. But a stewardess actually commented, named Melly. I looked at her TikTok profile, and all her stuff is from flying too, as a stewardess. And she said she has video of the object from the same date. Now,
when was this?
This was 2022. February 2nd, 2022 is when he took the video.
Flying in the same area?
It looks like she might be, yeah. But interestingly, I have corroboration of this from the ground that I found independently.
You think it was the same one?
Potentially.
That seems awfully...
Was it in Medellín?
Yeah, so this is I'm going to get to that. The question about what is this? A lot of people say weather balloon. And here's our old friend, the weather balloon. I always thought that was such a ridiculous argument. However, I thought...
Swamp gas.
Our old friend, the weather balloon.
I did start to consider that as an explanation. Because basically we're seeing this cube, right? Mm-hmm. Floating in the sky at 30,000 feet. Weather balloons do cross 20 to 40,000 feet. That's where the airliners usually fly, from what I read. But they go up much higher, and they're not supposed to hover in that area, but they have to pass it, obviously, to get through it. But I looked at images of weather balloons.
I was trying to find a square one right now. I can't find any.
Well, besides that, if you look at this, guys, again in the show notes, this black cube that is floating above the clouds, I mean, we're probably seeing like hundreds and hundreds of feet above it, right? Do you see a balloon that it's attached to?
You're saying. Like that's the payload for a balloon?
Yeah, that would be the idea. It's the radiosonde. I don't know how you pronounce it. Radiosonde. But it's the bottom of the what's hanging down from the balloon recording the data. That's what the weather balloon would be holding, but I don't see in this image the balloon above it.
You think he would see it from that distance? He'd see a balloon at some...
Right, there's nothing below it either, right?
Right. It's just a singular cube floating. And we see quite high above there. Like that's hundreds of feet.
There's no other technology that kind of is more singular now other than weather balloons.
I mean, if you think of drone or anything like that, without any sign of propulsion, no wings, no blades.
Right.
Propulsion, it's just...
Do drones even go that high?
I'm sure military drones.
They go 30,000 feet?
I would think so. I mean, I would think so.
But they're not that small. And they're not cube-shaped.
Anyway, so that was kind of my thought. I did go off the weather balloon route for a minute, and I was like, I've never actually considered a weather balloon as an explanation because it's like such a debunking, ridiculous idea to debunk. But I thought about it for a minute because you could say that, but without there being a cord attached or a balloon above it, it doesn't really make sense. But interestingly, I found separately 3 different accounts in Medellín from the ground of a black cube.
No, that's awesome.
And the thing is, it's not the same day. It's throughout the same year.
Where'd you find these?
I found a couple different people posting them, but there's a montage made by Hidden Underbelly. John, I think you actually showed me this guy years ago when we watched like creepy video montage or something.
Name sounds familiar.
He covers like paranormal and kind of like top 10 video type interesting videos, but he had this and combined several of them. I'll show you the first one here. This is from someone named Lorna Mosquera in Medellín, and this was June 27th, 2022.
Guys, what the hell is that?
Now he's filming from his balcony, kind of a high-rise apartment in the city, Medellín.
Guys, what the f is that?
You can see the city below. He's filming the clouds above. It's always kind of dark, thundercloudish type clouds.
Awesome place to live. Besides the
crime,
savage crime.
Okay, so this is my balcony. This is Medellín City.
But if you look at this footage, and again in the show notes, guys, and on YouTube, it looks identical to what the pilot saw above the same city, just a lot lower now.
Look, mountains, mountain top.
Beautiful place, though.
It does look gorgeous. I mean, surrounded by mountains there. Great place to hang out as a flying cube, too.
City. Wait, my finger. This is my finger. Like, honestly, I'm still... Is it a weather balloon, guys? I swear on God, like, I have no f***ing experience with Photoshop or whatever the f***. You can examine this video how much you ever want. I don't f***ing care. Like these... Bro, what the f*** is that? Like, look, there's a plane. There's a plane because we have an airport here. Like, to the left, to the right. To the right of me. What is that? What the f*** is that? Like, what? Guys, what the f***? No, this is not a... Is it a weather balloon? Look at the shape though. And our balloons that still... Oh my god, guys, what the f*** is that? Zoom out. Honestly, if that's a UFO, like Medellín is a city full of cell phones and people like photographing shit, so we hear about it. Like, This is the first time in my life that such a thing is happening to me, like a UFO sighting, whatever. I'm a huge skeptic, like huge. Jesus, what the is it?
It does not look like a cube.
It looks like a cube kind of half rotated. Yeah, outside.
It's more like a bulbous bubble.
It does look bulbous, but actually, if you look at what I showed you with the pilot's one, did you see the bulbous bubble on the sides of it?
Yeah,
see that? A little.
Yeah. It's not really a cube then.
Well, it's cubical. Some are cubes and some shapeshift, actually.
That looks like it actually has more sides than a cube.
What the pilot filmed?
Yeah.
That one looks like a hexagon, but it looks almost identical as far as like the shape coloring and texture. And we even have accounts, a shape-shifting cube. This was in Gloucester, Massachusetts. They watched it for 2 minutes. This metal-looking rectangular cube with rings shape-shifted into more cylindrical shape and then dove into the ocean. Fun. So these things apparently can shapeshift. And they're transmedium. The same that the pilots were saying, like Graves was talking about. Yeah. Transmedium cubes that are going, or I guess his were cubes within spheres. And again, you have the force field kind of effect around this if you look really closely. What's interesting too, we got the plane in the shot here. So I'm not going to describe too much of this more for you audio guys out there listening who can't see it, but there are multiple views of this thing from the same day in Medellín. Actually, these might even be different days. But even the guy witnessing it at first thought maybe weather balloon or was skeptical, but it just did not operate like that.
Suffice it to say, there is a lot going on in the skies, it seems like, over the past so many years.
I think the Tic-Tac was 2004. So, and of course we've had, plenty of UFO reports before that, but that's when I think the modern age of ufology has kind of opened up a little bit.
And since cell phones too, everyone can capture them. And Twitter, and just everything's instantaneous now, so it's so easy to share this stuff.
Exactly. If we talk about that tumbling effect that some of them have, here's kind of that spinning tumbling effect. This is a video of
That's the one I saw.
That's the one you saw? Yeah. This was in Missouri, Springfield, Missouri in 2021. All these seem to be occurring post-2019, 2020. We're starting to see the appearance of these things.
That one's pretty weird.
Yeah, this is, again, it's a cube spinning. You can see this reflective shimmer of the sun as one of the sides turns and hits it. So it has this kind of almost like fishing lure look to it as this cube turns in the sky.
That'd be very weird to see in the sky.
Yeah. There was a MUFON actually interview with the person who filmed this. The video was broken down by a 20-year veteran who designed drones for the military. And he said that it would be a nightmare to try to create a drone that spins. And it's highly unlikely that the object in question is a drone. He goes on to talk about the different revolutions and RPMs that he measured this thing doing, basically how crazy it is. Altitude of 15,000 feet, he believes. So we'll link all that in the show notes. Suffice it to say, as you said, John, there's things going on in the sky and this tumbling effect. There's a few other accounts that corroborate this. We have Clarendon Hills, Illinois, April 9th, 2023. The witness says, and these all come from New Fork. I'll put all these in the show notes so you guys can reference them yourselves. These are all specific cube, and you'll hear the similarities in this. April 9th, 2023, Clarendon Hills, Illinois. I saw a multi-sided mirror object floating low in the sky, facing north off the end of the I-83 off-ramp on 55th in Clarendon Hills, Illinois. It had 3 or 4 square or rectangular mirror sides and looked like it might have been rotating slowly. I was driving and saw it for about 2 minutes and took my eyes off to drive. When I looked again, I didn't find it. Again in Quaskey, Iowa, March 31st, 2023.
Craft soundlessly and steadily crossed over a still and moonlit night. The cube-like craft was the size of a medium-sized bus. It was rectangular in shape and glistened, as if it had a reflective and protective layer on the outside. It continued to glide in a southeastern direction and disappeared a minute later.
Weird. And again, June 29th, 2023, in Mankato, Minnesota. There are several here from Minnesota. Metallic cube-shaped object was moving at a steady pace. It was rotating with either a reflection or a light. Again, there's that same exact description, all the way in a different state.
Weird.
Montrose, Minnesota, May 29th, 2023. Cube-shaped object with lights. There was an aura or haze around the object. Sound familiar?
Yeah.
That force field kind of bubble? The object emitted other objects. The object emitted beams. The object changed color. This is a possible UFO abduction case. Animals reacted to the event. And then again in St. Paul, Minnesota, October 20th, 2022. Oh, I just have to show you guys this video. This object hovered with no sound at all, but it's right above the city. I have a potential explanation for this, but it is an eerie sight regardless. Oh, I remember this, seeing this.
Didn't they figure out what this was?
Yeah, well, there's a suggestion of what it was.
What is that? And what is it doing in the sky?
That sounds a little unsettled. I think one explanation for this could be, I don't know if they proved it unequivocally, is that it could be a shadow of a light beaming up on a foggy night. Yeah, that's definitely possible. Still an eerie sight. And then finally, March 5th, 2023 in Glen Haven, California. This will sound extremely familiar.
I live by a volcano, Mount Canocti. It's a 3 million year old lake, and what I saw over the lake was a beach ball, like a clear beach ball with the cube in it, really weird, and at first I thought it was like a box kite, but then it took off real fast after it was just sitting there in the air suspended. A few minutes later, a couple of helicopters and airplanes came by. Don't know if it was on the Air Force or what. Thank you for listening.
That's exactly the description, It's just weird. These are all submitted. So there's something there. I mean, these are occurring. People are seeing these things. Yeah.
That's weird. Military jet flies by, and then there's that, whatever that is.
Another again over Texas. I think another one, El Paso. Same thing, floating cube. Just creepily.
Interesting. I have no idea.
This again comes from UFO Sightings Daily. All these will be in the show notes, but just...
I can't zoom in any closer. It seems to have stopped. Now it's just floating there.
Just a floater. Just watching. I thought the coolest one was the one you had with the texture. Oh yeah, we're getting to that. Okay, I really like this account. This is the one in New Jersey. So I showed earlier, and I talked about to you guys, from Scott Waring of UFO Sightings Daily, that video of the cube in the sky with the lightning storm, right? Above the same area. Oh, is this the boat captain? Yeah, July 1st, 2023, 3:30 in the morning, 2.5 nautical miles off the coast of Sloop Point, New Jersey. I was on watch while sailing our boat north for the summer, watching two lights off in the distance. This thing appeared out of nowhere, 10 to 20 feet off my starboard bow. I was afraid I was going to hit it. It was a cube shape. Bottom 3 or 4 inches was fluorescent blue, which did not reflect in the water as a light might. The rest was too dark to see except white light on top, approximately 3 feet square. It was not in the water. It didn't bob with the waves. It did not continue on like something I would have just passed. It made no sound. I looked at it for several seconds as it stayed right beside me. I then reached across the cockpit for binoculars. When I turned to it again, it had pulled off about 60 feet and kept on the same trajectory as the boat. Then, white light on top began to grow brighter and brighter. It created a white cone about 3 feet into the air above. It remained for about 10 seconds and slowly and smoothly made its way southeast. I watched it go. It was soon out of sight. It wasn't scary or threatening. I'm a retired NGO director, and I've lived on a boat for the past 20 years. I'm 76, in good health, and not bonkers. I do not drink or do drugs, and was well rested. Crazy. Yeah. When was that? When was that account? That was July 1st, 2023. What's weird about this is the New Fork accounts I looked at. Mm-hmm. So, John, they have all kinds of shapes. You can categorize and search on the website for all sorts of shapes of UFOs. Most of them go back to, the 90s, 80s, whatever. Probably further. I didn't look that hard at that. But the cube ones all start earliest April of this year. Well, at least the ones reported on New Fork's website. Some of these I got from New Fork were from, I think, 2022. Oh, really? I didn't see any that old.
But regardless, they're all fairly new.
Yeah. Yeah. It's just kind of odd.
It almost makes me feel like it's technology of some new technology.
Like on Earth-based technology?
Potentially.
Or a new species visiting. Yeah. One thought I had, if you look at accounts of Foo Fighters from back in the World War II era, you always think of Foo Fighters as being like these colored lights they saw at night, which is true. But during the day, they displayed as silver balls. And what are we seeing now with these cubes around the same time period, these new things that we're seeing? Silver balls. We could play a clip. It's really cool. Over Iraq. I don't know if you saw that one, but it's like the camera catches the silver ball flying over Iraq. It's a drone, a military drone camera. And then the camera moves to catch up with it, and it just follows it as it's just hovering like 300 feet above the village, and it just goes like this. But it's just a silver ball suspended in midair. My thought is, I mean, this is one idea. I tend to believe that these things are not reverse engineered, but you could make the argument that maybe the Foo Fighters that were around in the 40s, if they weren't built by the Germans or, which seems to be the case that no one agreed, no one believes that it was an ally or an Axis power that had this technology. What if it was something exoplanet or extraterrestrial or whatever, but we reverse engineered it and it took us, 60, 70 years to recreate it. And that's the silver balls we're now seeing again. Because for a long time, you didn't have these reports. Not since the 1940s when they kind of faded out, these reports. But yeah, watch this thing. It's exactly what the pilots were describing in World War II. Yeah, Foo Fighters. And this is over Iraq from this year, 2022, last year, Middle East.
Weird.
Very bizarre. But so maybe reverse engineered? From the people that I trust, they seem to tend to think that it's not.
It looks like anti-gravity or something, the way it moves.
Just floating. Well, yeah, there's no propulsion visible. It could be electromagnetic.
That's true.
Yeah, very bizarre, but exciting.
Exciting nonetheless.
I wanted to mention specifically the idea of feeding off of energy, whether it's the sun or lightning storms. There was an account from Lawndale, North Carolina, May 16th, 2023 at 9:20 p.m. My wife and I were waiting out a strong storm with intense lightning this evening. While sitting in our living room with the lights off, she had fallen asleep and I was watching distant lightning from the window. During one of the lightning flashes, the sky was lit for a period of about 4 to 6 seconds, and I witnessed a cube-like object above the treetops between the lightning and myself. I cannot say for certain whether it was directly across the road in the treetops or if it was farther away in the sky, and appeared as if it was that close. But it was most definitely a cube shape soaring across the skyline. Black in color, it had what appeared to be 4 sides, but appeared to tumble or rotate slightly. It appeared to be moving very quickly. I saw no lights or anything else during this time. Weird. Yeah. I love that. It's haunting, that idea. You're just out during a thunderstorm at night and you hear the crickets. You look up over the tree line and there's just, as one lightning cracks, you see this ominous black cube just sitting above the trees. Slowly tumbling past. And waiting to eat you. Super disturbing. Speaking of eating you, this comes from Crater Lake, Iowa. And this is a big hotspot when it comes to missing people. Oh, that's why it sounds familiar. It's called Crater Lake, Iowa, in case I'm taken through the sky slit. That's what I've titled this. This was submitted to New Fork. This occurred May 27, 2023, 11:10 p.m. And again, New Fork, if you guys don't know, is the National UFO Reporting Center. Handy place to research. Yeah.
Saturday night, I went out back with my dogs before bed. As I stepped off the back porch and looked up, I saw what I thought was an out-of-place star. Then it started to move slowly, turning a little clockwise. That's when I saw the dim green-blue light. It also had a bigger white light. It moved a short distance before slipping through a slit that was camouflaged like the sky and stars. Then it was just gone. Now, 2 years ago on July 4th, my son and I saw the same type of UFO, but much closer. That time it came down from way up extremely fast and rested above the interstate. It had a dim green light. Then it's like someone on the object uncovered the light. It did not just turn on. Then an Omaha police helicopter flew in front of it and saw that it was twice as big as the copter and shaped like a bunch of boxes put together. It then disappeared for 15 minutes and reappeared above the First National Bank Tower in downtown Omaha.
That's awesome.
The white light of the craft was coming on and off, like someone was revealing it with a tarp. It was way, way too big and fast to be a drone. It then did a bunch of small, fast circles and disappeared. My son and I were freaked out. I sent the video of it disappearing to MUFON back then, and now I don't have it. I wanted to report this just in case I'm taken. Thank you.
Thank you. Crazy. I thought it was a creepy kind of thought at the end. Yeah. Dude, this is why I think this is real too. I mean, all the corroborating accounts we've talked about, did you notice that in his account here? This guy's in Iowa, Crater Lake. Yeah. blue light on one side, right? Bluish green, bluish green dim light. The other side had a white light, right? What about the UFO captain? The UFO captain. The boat captain. What did he say? Didn't he say it was fluorescent blue?
Oh, yeah.
With I think he said white on the other side.
Sounds like the same technology. Also, the dropping down fast and hovering just above the surface of something.
Just like in Fraver's account.
And specifically the camouflage like the stars, as if there was something right there that, like he said, a sky slit. But we see that, and John, there's video coming up again, guys, it's video, but it is
incredible.
This cube or cubical rectangle that you will see shortly here peeking out of the clouds like through a cloud portal, like a manifested cloud portal of some kind that this thing just kind of slips and peeks around. And then, I mean, you got to see it. It's amazing. And it was caught by 2 different people in the same city on the same day. El Paso, Texas, I believe. Okay, last read I have here. The winged cube emerges from sky perforation. Does that sound familiar? This was Buffalo, New York. So last one we just read, Crater Lake, Iowa. This is Buffalo, New York. And again, in this case, there's a haze around the object. Missing time was experienced. Like kind of like that short-term memory we talked about with the hunters.
I was lounging in my backyard on a warm summer night, enjoying a fire by a 200-year-old fireplace located on my property. I was marveling at the brightness of the moon and began to take photos for a period of 10 minutes. I later learned it was a sturgeon moon. I noticed a bright, white cube-like object that appeared to have wings emerge from a perforation in the sky. It looked like a trapezoidal-shaped window imprinted into the sky, in which this object emerged with a burst of light. The object morphed into an oval-like shape and appeared to be more dense than the holographic appearance that had perforated initially from the sky. The moon, as my reference point, barely moved location in the sky, in contrast to this object that moved between locations in a short period of time. There appeared to be a swirly, hazy holographic aura around the object during this time. I took several photos of the object from a stationary position.
I couldn't find the photos.
You know, when he says wings, does he mean like aircraft wings?
I'm not sure.
Because the first time I read this, because I came across this one too.
I pictured like Mercury wings.
I pictured like dove wings.
I know, so did I. Like, was it Mario? They have like the boxes with like the wings on them?
Why.
That's what I was picturing too. That sounds a little different. That sounds almost like a sky window with something coming out of it. But this is the final thing I want to play. Is that okay? I know you had but I was going to play the cube coming out of the clouds.
Okay. After this, Jared, let's play Graves' account of that incredible red square that the Boeing contractors saw.
Red cube? Yeah.
Square.
Oh, it was flat?
Well, there's an argument on that because he says square initially. Someone said later as he was talking to one of the congressmen, he said cube and reiterated cube. So that's kind of unclear.
Okay, this comes from Secure Team, who I'm sure a lot of you guys know. John, you know Secure Team?
Yeah.
So this was submitted to him. He's an Ohio guy, actually. I think he's Mansfield area. But he's always got amazing stuff. So many people send original footage into him.
Great stuff.
Yeah, really good stuff. They're doing it for a long time. This took place, I think it was El Paso, Texas, on June 29th, 2015. And I'm just going to play it here since it's, it was submitted directly to him. I'll just let him explain it.
Hey, what's up everybody? We've got a doozy for you guys today. The images that you guys are seeing right now were sent in to us by a source named Walter C. Lenz of El Paso, Texas, who thankfully snapped the images that you're now looking at of what can only be described as a massive three-dimensional cube-shaped UFO, which in the very first image can be seen almost shooting out at a pretty fair rate of speed out of what looks like a massive black hole type portal or opening up within the sky and surrounding clouds. The source states that this black portal or hole in the clouds appeared within a matter of seconds, which is initially what caught his eye and made him do a double take at the clouds as he left his office of employment for lunch at around 1 p.m. noon in El Paso. He said that it began to get very windy out, and he noticed a small portion of clouds begin to swirl and circle in on one another, forming this portal shape, at which point the center of the clouds became jet black. Now this is when the source decided to hurry up and pull out his phone for a picture, and at this point, the source had not seen any UFOs, and had simply wanted to image these anomalous cloud formations. But just as he snapped the first image, this massive looking cube-shaped UFO is caught on photograph, jetting out of this dark black wormhole looking manifestation and making its presence known. The source observed the craft, or entity, Whatever this thing could be, he watched it move at a steady pace through the cloud cover, disappearing into the clouds and for a few short moments breaking back out once again, to mystify all those who might be gazing up from below, from the events that are transpiring. Walter was able to snap about 7 more images in attempts to catch the object on its exit from one cloud to another, out of which he successfully caught 2 more images of the actual object being visible, or partially visible, just as it starts to come out of a break in the clouds, which you can see in this second image here. Now, I am personally at a loss for words when it comes to this UFO sighting, because this thing is mind-blowing.
So we're seeing this cube object, this dark cube in the sky that almost seems to be wrapped. At first you see it. So the first image is this guy was leaving his office. He's the beautiful sky. So he just goes to take a picture of this weird anomalous cloud looking thing in the sky.
And swirling clouds.
Swirling clouds. And then as he snaps the picture, this black cube is ejected from this kind of black swirl portal looking puff.
Yeah.
If you will. I don't know how to describe it.
Does look like a black hole.
Yeah.
Weird sphincter of sorts. Sky sphincter.
That's how I would design one if I could. A black hole just popping it out there.
That's a great picture.
It's an incredible image.
Skip to the next where you see the thing in its full glory.
So there's another image here where he's pointing up at it.
There's a reference.
The fuller image is him pointing up. So he's there. You can get some reference of where he is in the sky based on where he was standing. Then you get a clear image.
I didn't see that one before. That almost looks fake.
It looks like an organic long box of dark material.
Definitely the clearest one we've seen so far.
Yeah. So this is at the point, I can't remember if he said there's a woman that comes in.
That's like a rectangle.
There's a second eyewitness.
So there's a second eyewitness who's an accountant who didn't want to be named, so she remained anonymous. But she took another picture over El Paso at the same time and said, I noticed a square-shaped figure. It was a giant solid thing with designs around it and a faint magnetic oscillation-type humming.
Yeah, this is my favorite, this picture. So guys, this will be in the show notes or come to the YouTube channel and watch it. But this is my favorite one. It looks so much like, it reminds me of, what's that movie with Pinhead?
Hellraiser.
Yeah, that one definitely reminds me of Hellraiser.
Just wait till you see this next one, John. It's like a Hellraiser cube. What is that box called in the movie? I forget what they call it.
Oh, the puzzle box?
Yeah, it's got a name, but...
The lament configuration.
But at this point, with the long cube that we're seeing, which is the third image, guys, it looks like a long box, essentially, with kind of rough, organic material texture around it. But at this shot, it's out of the clouds. This is the point where it was free floating in the sky, just a slow float between points. So maybe in and out of different wormhole, portal, whatever you want to call it. This is when it was just floating there like nobody's business.
There we go.
Here's the next shot. This does not even look real, this next shot.
Where's that from? Looks like they're right next to it.
This is what the woman photographed.
Where is she, in the sky?
I think it's a zoomed in shot from below.
Oh.
But yeah, it does kind of look like you're above the cloud, but I think it's just an optical illusion.
That's pretty clear, dude. Like, how is that zoomed in that close and looks without the pixelation?
Maybe she had like a camera.
Or how low is it? I mean, it's pixelated.
It's in the clouds.
I didn't think this photo was real.
The edges, though, are pretty defined.
Yeah, if you watch this, he actually goes and puts this under
contrast.
He does contrast, negative. And
I'm not saying it's fake. I'm just surprised by the...
I mean, look at that. So here's another shot of the same. Basically, we're seeing this giant, almost, yeah, like you said, puzzle box from Hellraiser in the sky.
It's part of the cloud, guys.
It's definitely not part of the cloud.
It's just a balloon.
I mean, if this is a real photo, it could, of course, could be a hoax. It could be one person that's sending both images and pretending. But I mean, with all the other stuff we've seen, it also could very well be true, because the images are incredible, especially the second image here where there's designs on the box that are almost pattern designs that just look, I don't even know how to describe it.
It almost looks like a clip from a video game.
Yeah.
Like an older video game. What is that?
Is that the same picture? Just
I think it might be the same picture, just negative.
Oh, okay. The first one, yeah, I was going to say. Here's
a clear image of this box
that's so
coming
weird.
out of this black puff in the sky. Just incredible. Whatever this is, whether it's biological itself, it could be some kind of geometric animal, sky whale, sky creature, just puffing around up there.
Where's it coming from, though?
I don't know. Maybe the sky in a plane just beyond ours, another dimension.
Man, what a weird world. Neil deGrasse. Thank God we have him to get us through.
Right.
All right, let's wrap it up with this last account, because for people listening, they actually get to hear some testimony.
Yeah.
Which if you want to hear more testimony, and we're not going to be doing visuals in the expansion.
Oh, you got to come to the expansion.
Yeah, come to the expansion, and we're going to hear more from Grusch and Graves and Fraver. Do yourself a favor and join us with Fraver in the expansion.
Yes! And we may have found a studio space, hopefully. Maybe.
Every time we have news like that, like last time we were like...
we're not going to go to... But if we get the space, it's going to be awesome, guys.
Yeah, right now we're recording on a pool table.
in the basement of our parents' house.
Literally. We had to move the studio for a minute as we're in transition, looking for a space.
Yes. But let's hear from Graves, because this I thought was super interesting. To me, this was one of the coolest parts, even though it's very short.
I mean, this sounds like a science fiction novel from the 60s, just a bizarre scene. Just play it.
And you're going to hear Congresswoman Luna ask him about this. Go to 40 minutes.
I wonder what the Congress thinks about it, truly.
Some of these guys, I was really surprised, man.
Her name is Mrs. Luna.
Mm-hmm.
That's so weird.
Like the moon.
Yeah.
So she was one of the Congress people to organize this subcommittee hearing.
Written in the stars.
I don't know what it is with Congress people's aides, but they all look like they're dying or they're extraterrestrials observing.
They really do.
Look at these people. They're just like,
and there's never reactions. They have no reactions to what's being said. And the Congress people do, but the aides are just like,
yeah, this is not healthy.
My next question would actually be for Mr. Graves. Can you please explain to me in detail the event that occurred at Vandenberg Air Force Base?
Certainly. In the 2003 timeframe, a large group of Boeing contractors were operating near one of the launch facilities at Vandenberg Air Force Base when they observed a very large 100-yard sided red square approach the base from the ocean and hover at low altitude over one of the launch facilities. This object remained for about 45 seconds or so before darting off over the mountains. There was a similar event within 24 hours later in the evening. This was a morning event, I believe 8:45 in the morning. Later in the evening, post-sunset, there were reports of other sightings on base, including some aggressive behaviors. These objects were approaching some of the security guards at rapid speeds before darting off. And this is information that was received through one of the witnesses that have approached me at Americans for Safe Aerospace.
Was this documented in any official form, whether it was a police blotter?
Yes, they had official documentation and records from the event that the witness held over the years.
I'm not going to ask you to do it right now for time reasons, but you'd be able to sketch what was witnessed, correct? And have you seen that before on any other equipment and or during your flight time?
I have not seen what they've described. This object was estimated to be almost the size of a football field, and I have not seen anything personally that large.
That's crazy. So a football size red square coming out of the sea and approaching security at a secure nuclear
facility.
Boeing contractors seeing this, it just comes up, a football field size red square, and sits there for 45 seconds and then goes away and comes back later in the night a few times and just keeps, they say, aggressively moving towards security.
It's insane.
Also, an argument against it being just a made up story. Like, who would say, oh, it's a big red square?
Right.
If you're going to describe a UFO, like, what's so bizarre is just how blank it is. It's like a big red floating square.
That's what makes it more believable.
Exactly. And that's the trick.
I hear accounts like this and I start to think about like the idea of dimensional space. Like you hear the idea of like, what if they are operating interdimensionally? So we've given this analogy before, but you know, when a fish sees a bobber come into the water, what do they see? They see the bottom part of like a hemisphere, right?
Right.
In the water, it just appears out of nowhere and then it just disappears. What if we're seeing that sort of thing?
Or a pencil passing through a piece of paper just sees the ring, the circle.
Right.
They don't see the whole three-dimensional object. So what if we're just seeing a piece of something
I mean,
passing
that would
through?
explain these super bizarre things that don't make sense with physics, where you have squares coming up out of the sea and moving almost instantaneously, and then just moving at right angles, stop, go, you know. I mean, that's an interesting thing to think about.
The cubes are a little more just donkey, just, you know.
Donkey?
That's not what I meant to say. Humpty Dumpty? They just kind of roll, tumble, you know what I mean? Like
Higgledy-piggledy?
Donkey.
I mean, that one was spinning pretty quick.
Yes, sometimes they spin quick, John.
Well, it wasn't honky donkey or whatever you said.
Donkey.
It was donkey.
My point is, some of those are just obviously more physical in our world. They're three-dimensional. They roll, they tumble, they spin.
Yeah.
You know, they got movements, but like a box.
I think the bottom line here is that there are things operating above us all the time.
Yes.
How many thousands of sightings are each year and they aren't even reported. So this stuff is going on, guys. So keep your eyes peeled. We saw some weird stuff
We're
before.
like a fish watching a bobber.
Exactly.
Or a line-drawn man watching a pencil cut through the sky.
I don't understand that one.
So
Jeremy's brain.
If you live on a two-dimensional sheet of paper, like that's your life.
All right, that's enough.
But let's
move
this
along.
is a real analogy people use.
Bobber's better.
If you lived in a one-dimensional world, right, or two-dimensional world, and a three-dimensional pencil is pushed through the paper, you can only see the ring that it makes, right? You can only see the one two-dimensional edge.
Right.
That's the argument dimensionally, is like you're just seeing one dimension of it, which is that little.
Yeah.
Stick figures don't have eyes, Jeremy.
They do. They're just two-dimensional.
Join us for the expansion, guys, because we are going to go into some pretty compelling testimony from the floor of this subcommittee hearing. All right, guys, we'll see you. We'll see you over in the expansion. Get cubed up with us. We're going to get into some crazy testimony. Oh, and Future Tech. Don't forget Future Tech.
Future Tech, and our reactions to the...
Can we talk about the semiconductors a little bit?
Exactly. That's what I want to talk about.
Mm-hmm.
Cool.
I love house-warmed semiconductors.
Room temperature.
House-warmed. My brain don't work today.
Oh, yeah, and one more thing. We will be doing thank yous next episode. So sorry about that for all you new expansion members, but we got really busy and it was a super long episode. So stick around for that next time. We promise we will get to you.
All right, guys, join us in the expansion, and we will see you next time on
Believable. I don't know why I don't like that.